Hey everybody, welcome to Freedom Talk. This is Kelly John Walker, and I'm delighted to have Megan Box here. Megan's been on my show before, and I really respect her because she's come out of citizenry and run. And I really like what she said. She said, "I didn't run for power. I ran because silence is no longer an option." So, Reagan, welcome to Freedom Talk, and we'd love to hear an update on your campaign, where you're running, and some of the issues. Then I have a couple specific questions for you.
Okay, I'm running in the 14th Congressional District to replace Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm just going everywhere I can, every candidate forum. I'm just trying to get ads out on social media, meet the voters, let them know there is someone who honestly cares and running for the right reason, and hoping they pick me on March 10th.
Yeah. And I really appreciate that you're not a career politician, but that you've felt moved to run and make a difference for the country. And I really, honestly, I think that's the future of the country. But I wanted to ask you a question that's really apropos for the time. And I know your opponent and you have come into some disagreement on this, you might say. But what are your views on Israel and their relationship with our country?
Yeah, I mean, Israel, they are our greatest ally in the Middle East. We've got to protect them. That's true. But at the same time, they have the whole oil deal they made with Egypt. They're becoming the world center for banking, and they're going to have the money to stand on our own. So we need to start retracting that aid. They can have free health care because we pay for everything. I don't think that's necessarily fair. I don't like what I'm seeing in the general population there. And I called that out in my debate. And Clay Fuller, the Trump endorsed candidate, when I held his feet to the fire about AIPAC, he just started screaming and yelling that I'm a liar. There's no genocide going on in Israel. And then started yelling and screaming that I'm anti-Semitic. And he said he did take AIPAC money and that he would go to Israel. And, I just thought that behavior was really bad to put words into my mouth, share a video that's highly edited when I said nothing that was anti-Semitic whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah, and from my standpoint, it's somewhat of a delicate balance, but I see some extremes. And on one side, Israel can do no wrong because they're God's chosen people. On the other side is people who are very anti-Semitic, anti-Israel. And I land somewhere where we say, the government of Israel certainly is not beyond criticism or the ties that they have with the country. I'm very much against treating people differently because they're of Jewish heritage. I have several friends who are, and I think that's something. But we don't. It's funny to me because if somebody criticizes the U.S. government, let's say under Biden, people don't call you necessarily anti-American or anything like
Yeah, I
that.
was thinking about that same sentiment today. It's really weird. Like, how is calling out a government calling out the people? Just like when things go on in our government we don't like,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean we're bad-hearted. We just have no control over it in that moment. It's really sad that we've come to that. And why can't we just say wrongdoing is wrongdoing? Like me personally,
Right.
I don't care what religion you are. I don't care about what color you are. But if I see something like that, it's only right to call it out. I don't want to see any person unjustly being treated.
Yeah. And in addition to the strategic importance of Israel, and I've talked to people like Boone Cutler about that, and I do believe that strategically we do have a national interest there, but also culturally, as part of our faith heritage, Israel obviously is very, very important. And the Ten Commandments, biblical principles, are part of the founding of this nation. So I think we also have an interest there. But as someone who grew up as a pastor's kid and who has a degree in theology, I like to say, maybe a little bit tongue in cheek, that we shouldn't be surprised if Israel's getting itself into trouble, or if the government engages in some corruption and things. Because if there's one thing from Genesis to Revelation, it's that there was a covenant with Abraham, which I believe is still in effect, and of course we have a new covenant. But Israel has God calls them stiff-necked Israel, and he's always forgiving. But Israel's gotten itself into a few pickles from from ancient times. So it's always been a mixed bag. And I think obviously there are Israelites, Jewish people who are very devout. There are obviously many Christians who are of Jewish heritage. But I think it's really doing a disservice if you paint Israel with a broad brush and really conflate the civil authorities with the people as a race, or that heritage going back to Abraham. So,
well, even biblically, for me, like
yeah,
the Bible doesn't tell me to worship the secular government of Israel.
right,
When the Bible speaks about Israel, he's talking about the lines of Jacob.
yeah, yeah,
It's a people. It's not necessarily a country.
right. And if you look in Kings, Chronicles, Samuel, you see that Israel sometimes had just kings and good reigns, and then they had evil kings, and sometimes there was a national blessing because a lot of that hinged on whether or not the leadership and the king were righteous, and then there were times of national curse when some of the leaders would say worship Baal and erect the idols and things like that. So I think those historic principles have some modern applications, and I think it's really important right now that people can hold their theological views of Israel in the Bible and in history, but also recognize and separate the fact that the civil government and even maybe some groups that might have some ulterior motives, that they're not immune to criticism. Otherwise, you'd have to take some umbrage with God criticizing Israel throughout history.
Yeah, and the reality is, as human beings, when you get in positions of power, it can always lead to corruption, and it doesn't matter what country you're in. And we've got to be aware of that and be able to put our religious feelings aside, per se, and say, okay, this is just bad behavior. We don't need to be accepting that. And I don't think that there's anything fair or unjust about it. That is really fair and just. If in the Bible, it teaches us to call out bad deeds and misgiving and going after the innocent and weak or whatever.
Right.
And so sticking up for innocent people should be a Christian tenement.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good segue to what I was just thinking. As you know, Reagan, I do a lot of work on behalf of targeted Americans, school parents, people who are at J6 just walking around and who are targeted, but basically a lot of people who are weaponized against by the federal government. And I'm really an advocate for those people. And what I see is that most, if not all of those people have seen no justice, no restitution for what they've been through. And I was just on Laura Logan's show and Eric Metaxas and others talking about how we're talking about maybe 60 people or 60 families of people that we've identified as having been targeted for being concerned parents. I know there are more, but it's not a large amount of people, and restoring them and basically restoring what the Biden administration and the federal government, the DOJ, did to them and caused the losses and legal fees. It's not a lot of money, and yet we stall over that. We haven't seen any progress, and yet billions of dollars are sent to other countries, Ukraine, Israel, you name it. So really, I think the American people are very frustrated, not demonizing Israel necessarily or other countries. Everybody has their national sins and problems and issues, but I think that where the frustration comes from is that the administration is looking over the heads of its own people, over the domestic people who've often been the ones who stand in the gap, who fight for our country. And we need to take care of the people at home first, honestly. And I'm disappointed that it hasn't been done. So from my perspective, Reagan, and I think this is kind of where you fall, like, yes, Israel is strategically important. We want to stand up against any sort of attack of any sovereign nation, particularly if it's motivated by terrorism and murder. But the emphasis, we can't neglect our own people at the expense of funding other countries.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we've got so many Americans hurting. We've got 37% of all Americans on some sort of welfare program. And to be honest with you, I know a bunch of people think people are lazy if they're on welfare, But I think we have a bunch of people, because of our national debt devaluing the dollar, that are getting pushed out of middle class and being pushed into a lower class system.
Yeah.
And this is our government's fault. And I think there's a lot of good people that are suffering because of these policies. And this is why I'm running. I want to try to fix this mess.
America's founders warned that without knowledge and virtue, no nation can remain free. Yet through the steady infiltration of Marxist ideology, we have been stripped of both. And we are no longer a moral and educated people. To save America, we must spark nothing less than a national renaissance. That's why you need Freedom Talk magazine, the journal of truth and virtue. We cultivate enlightened thinking and principled living, offering unique insights into the issues and remarkable people defining our world. Sign up today for your free subscription to Freedom Talk magazine and join the new American Renaissance.
So Reagan, I know a number of members of Congress. Some of them I count as friends. Often they're the ones who are not career politicians. But I know that a lot of people come in with high ideals and they want to change the world. And then they find the DC environment, it can be pretty tribal, even antagonistic. And sometimes they want to do things, and maybe even some of their Republican colleagues are sold out or have special interests. So I wanted to ask, and maybe it's a hard question, but what do you believe you could do in Washington, DC if you get into Congress to really make a difference?
You know, I just hope I'm persuasive and can get it done. But to be honest, I mean, I know it's going to be disheartening to see just the factions and how it really works up there. But like I tell people, what do you do? Do you keep trying or just die being complacent? And so, you know, the reality is no one can guarantee anything 100% when they go to office. But I will tell you this, I will do everything I can to make it better and do what's right.
And I respect that. And, you know, I've had people call me a statesman before. I'll probably never run for office. I don't think that's my calling, although I respect people who do. But I kind of want to put my 2 cents in here and say that what I'd really like to see is our representatives working more closely with people and using their talents and saying, come on, let's team up. Let's work on this together. And I think sometimes, you know, whether it's congressmen or congresswomen or people in the administration, they tend to think like, well, we're here to do everything for the people, or they need us. But really, it should be a relationship, because in our representative form of government, everyone who holds office is beholden to the people and works for the people. So my hope is, like President Trump brought in Elon Musk. He brought a team in, even some teenagers, you know, as part of Doge. I'd like to see more of that. I'd like to see more open doors, transparency, accountability, and really having citizens come in and have more of a say and a participation in it. So Reagan,
I would love to see that too. One of the things for me is we need to get rid of the toxic politics on both sides. I believe that's been used to divide us, and I promise you elect me, you won't see that from me, because where we're at as a nation, both sides are suffering from the same issues. We just need to learn to talk things out and get along, because I think our country can heal and unite better if we do that.
You're absolutely right. And there are different players that are involved with that. One is the Chinese Communist Party. They really use social media and psychology from other means. They're very skilled at it to divide us as a people. And we have to push back on that. And we have to start talking and listening to one another. So Reagan, thank you so much for coming on. Tell us where we can find you, how we can support you, and tell us about the dates of the primary and the election and anything else we need to know.
So you can learn more about me at reaganboxforcongress.com. If you would like to, you can donate there. And then, you know, if you don't have money, on the bottom of my website, there's links to all my social media. Follow me and share the information. That's free of charge. It gives me a broader range.
Excellent. Well, we wish you the best, Reagan, and regardless of the results, really appreciate your service. We hope you do get in there, but keep fighting for the country, and thank you for everything you're willing to do.
Thank you so much. It's been great being on here.
You bet. Talk to you later.
Bye.